You're not my biological son. So I must have forgotten to mention you in the will, my father announced at his birthday party. The room erupted in laughter, everyone except me. I walked over calmly. Without saying a word, I placed my gift on the table, just a single sheet of paper. Then, I tore it to pieces right in front of him. When he finally managed to piece it back together, his face turned ghostly pale. Hello, my name is Gregory Martin. I'm 33 years old and currently live in Lyon. I'm the founder of a tech startup that develops software to optimize energy consumption in smart buildings. It's a venture into which I've poured my sweat, my tears, and my heart. If you met me today, you'd probably see a confident man leading a successful company, living the kind of life many dream of. But if you asked me about my past, I'd tell you a very different story, one far from easy. A story that begins in the warm days of childhood, but soon plunges into darkness, where I learned that family isn't always the safest place. I'm a ward of the state. I have no memory of my biological parents. All I know is that they gave me up to Child Protective Services near Marseille when I was 3 years old. A middle-class couple, Robert and Helena Lambert, adopted me. They lived in a charming little house in Provence, with a white picket fence and a garden full of daisies. The first time I stepped into that house, I was too young to understand what family meant, but I felt safe. Helena, my adoptive mother, had a smile as gentle as spring sunlight. She'd hold me in her arms, sing lullabies, and tell stories about rabbits in the forest. Robert, my adoptive father, was a tall, stern man, but he always made time to play soccer with me after his shift at the bank. I called them Mom and Dad, and in the innocent heart of a child, I truly believed they loved me as if I were their own. Those early years felt like a painting in soft pastel tones. I remember Sunday mornings, when Mom would sit at the kitchen table baking buttery cookies that filled the house with warmth, while Dad taught me how to properly close the cabinet doors. I loved running through the garden where he had built a wooden swing with his own hands. Gregory, you're gonna fly like an eagle, he'd laugh while pushing me, as Mom waved at us from the porch. In those moments, I felt like I had everything a child could ever want: love, care, and a sense of belonging. I thought I was the happiest boy in the world. But then everything changed. When I was 6, my mom gave birth to twins, a boy and a girl, Julian and Leah. The day they were born, I stood outside the hospital room holding a yellow balloon that Dad had bought for me. I was thrilled to become a big brother, eager to play with them, to teach them how to kick a ball or scribble with crayons. But when Mom brought Julian and Leah home, her eyes no longer looked at me the same way. The warm smile that had once been mine alone was now reserved only for the 2 babies in the crib. Dad was no different. He was too busy taking care of the twins, and our soccer games quickly became a thing of the past. I started to feel like a shadow in the house I once called my safe haven. At first, I thought it was just exhaustion. After all, they had newborn twins and naturally had to devote more time to them. I tried to help mopping the floor, folding clothes, even singing lullabies when Mom was too tired. But every time I tried to get close, I was met with cold stares or words as sharp as blades. One time, while I was trying to teach Julian how to hold a spoon, Mom snatched it from my hands. Gregory, leave your brother alone. You don't need to be doing that. Her voice was icy, like I was a stranger. I just stood there, my hands trembling, unable to understand what I had done wrong. In the years that followed, the unfairness became undeniable. Julian and Leah got new clothes, new toys, while I wore hand-me-downs with worn-out shoulders. When I asked Dad if I could go to the movies with some friends, he replied dryly, "You need to be reasonable, Gregory. We don't have money to waste on silly things." But the following week, I watched him take Julian and Leah to an amusement park. I began to wonder if I was ever really part of that family. The breaking point came one night when I was 9. Julian, who was 3 at the time, broke Mom's favorite vase. I had tried to stop him, but Mom walked in, saw the shattered pieces, and turned to me. "Gregory, what are you doing to your brother?" she yelled, her face red with anger. I tried to explain, but she cut me off. "You're just an adopted child, Gregory. Don't think you have the right to discipline them." Those words pierced my heart like a knife. I stood frozen, tears welling up, but I clenched my jaw. Then I ran to my room and locked the door. That night, I hugged my pillow, crying silently, feeling, for the first time, a deep, aching loneliness. I was no longer their son. Just a child placed in that house. From that moment on, I began to withdraw. I spoke less, smiled less, avoided family dinners. I found comfort in old books from the school library, where I could escape into other worlds where no one reminded me of my status. But despite the pain, deep down, I was still grateful to my adoptive parents. They gave me a roof over my head, food on my plate, and clothes to wear. I told myself that one day I would succeed, that I'd thank them, and maybe, just maybe, they'd look at me like a son again. The rest of my childhood became a battle to preserve a shred of self-worth. I excelled at school, always among the top students, but never received a single word of praise from my parents. Meanwhile, Julian and Leah only had to scribble a drawing to earn hugs and see their artwork proudly displayed on the wall. One time, I won first place in a school science fair and brought home a trophy to show them. Mom glanced at it and said, "Well done, Gregory. Now go do your homework." But when Leah won a small prize at the park, Mom hugged her, beaming. "My daughter is so talented." I stood there, holding my trophy, feeling completely invisible. I started to wonder if I had done something wrong. Was I just not good enough? Was it because I wasn't their biological child that their love had limits? Or was there some other reason I couldn't understand? I let the pain and loneliness eat away at my fragile soul. When I turned 18, I came to a painful realization. The problem wasn't that I was flawed, it was that they had simply chosen not to love me. That truth hurt, but it also ignited a fire inside me. I decided that even if they didn't see me as their son, I would live well and succeed. Not to prove anything to them, but to prove it to myself. The day I packed my bags and left the house in Province, I didn't cry. I just told myself, "Gregory, this is your chance. Don't look back." And I walked away, carrying the scars of childhood, but also a spark of hope that I'd one day find a place where I truly belonged. I got accepted to the University of Lyon with a partial scholarship enough to cover tuition, but not the cost of living. My adoptive parents didn't give me a single cent. On the day I left, Dad simply nodded and said, "Good luck." Meanwhile, Mom was busy cooking for Julian and Leah. I stood by the gate, looking at them one last time, hoping for a hug or a word of encouragement. But there was nothing. It was as if I had never existed in that house. I turned my back, dragging my worn-out suitcase, and boarded a bus to Lyon, where I would start from scratch. Lyon, in 2010, was a vibrant city full of opportunities but ruthless for those who had nothing. I rented a tiny room in an old building in the Guillotier district, where the walls were cracked and mold spread along the corners. My bed was an old mattress thrown on the floor, and my desk was a wooden crate I found on the street. I couldn't afford new textbooks, so I borrowed them from the library or asked older students. But I never complained, I didn't feel like I had that right. If I wanted to change my fate, I had to work twice, maybe 3 times, as hard as everyone else. To pay the bills, I accepted any job I could find. During the day, I attended lectures. At night and on weekends, I worked as a waiter at a cafe near campus. My shifts would stretch past midnight. My feet ached, and the smell of coffee clung to my hair. Some days, impatient customers would yell at me for bringing a latte instead of a cappuccino. I'd lower my head, apologize, and keep serving, because every tip meant a meal the next day. On weekends, I also delivered pizzas, pedaling through the scorching summer heat, sweat soaking through my shirt. I delivered to pristine homes, where kids laughed in the gardens. Seeing them, I couldn't help but think of Julian and Leah, of the days when I had dreamed of being loved like that. But I'd quickly push those thoughts away. The past was something I couldn't change. But the future, that was in my hands. University life wasn't easy. I was studying software engineering, a course that required focus and creativity, but I lived in constant exhaustion from overwork. Some nights, I'd sit in front of an old borrowed computer, struggling to finish programming assignments while my eyes burned from lack of sleep. I remember once, during a group project, I passed out on the keyboard. I only woke up when a friend shook me. "Gregory, are you okay? You look like you're about to pass out," he asked, concerned. I just smiled and said, I'm fine, just a little tired. But the truth was, I wasn't fine. Every day was a struggle not to be crushed by debt, hunger, and loneliness. Student loans were my heaviest burden. Even with the scholarship, I had to borrow more money to cover rent and food. Each month, I spent as little as possible, often surviving on instant noodles or ham and butter sandwiches. Once, I looked inside my wallet and saw only €3, while the power bill was already overdue. I sat in my dark, rented room, wondering if I had taken the wrong path. But then I remembered my childhood. Those cutting words. "You're just an adopted child." No. I couldn't give up. If I fell now, I'd be proving them right. That I wasn't worth anything. I wiped away the tears, stood up, and kept going. Despite everything, I never asked my adoptive parents for help. I had their number, but I never called. Part of me knew they didn't care. The other part wanted to make it on my own. I told myself that even if the whole world turned its back on me, I would keep moving forward. Not so they would regret it, but so I wouldn't. Still, on long nights, lying on that old mattress, I couldn't help thinking about them. I wondered how Julian and Leah were doing, if my parents ever mentioned me. Once, I opened an old family photo taken when I was about 5. I was between mom and dad, smiling with pure joy. Looking at that photo felt like a knife to the chest. But I didn't cry. I folded the picture, put it away in a drawer, and told myself, "Gregory, you don't need them anymore." Slowly, I started to find light in the darkness. At university, I made a few good friends who didn't know my past, but treated me as an equal. One of them, Carlos, a cheerful Spanish student, often shared his food with me when he saw me eating nothing but bread. "You're as skinny as a stick, Gregory. Eat this sandwich," he'd say, shoving a hot snack into my hand and refusing to take no for an answer. Moments like that, small as they were, made me feel a little less alone. I also discovered a passion for software engineering. The clean lines of code gave me a sense of control. In the world of programming, no one cared whether I was adopted or an orphan. If my code worked, I had value. I began joining group projects and coding competitions, slowly gaining the attention of my professors. One time, Carlos and I developed a smart energy optimization project for buildings, an innovative idea at the time. Our project won second place in a national competition, and for the first time, I felt like I could accomplish something meaningful. But life was still far from perfect. In my third year, I got a call from an old friend back in Province. "Gregory, I just saw Julian and Leah at the mall with your parents. They looked so happy. You should call them. It's been so long." Those words hit me like a bucket of cold water. I smiled at my friend, but as soon as I hung up, I froze as if the world had collapsed around me. They were still living well. Still happy. As if I had never existed. I wondered if they ever thought about me just once. But I quickly shook my head, stood up, and went back to coding. I couldn't let the past drag me down. Not ever. Graduation was a huge milestone, but it also came with a harsh reality. I graduated with honors, but the job market was in crisis due to the economic recession. I sent out hundreds of resumes to small companies and big corporations alike, but all I got were polite rejections. My student debt kept growing like a dark shadow, forcing me to move into an even cheaper place where I heard my neighbors fighting through the thin walls every night. I kept working as a waiter and a delivery guy, but the money barely covered the bills, let alone allowed me to plan a future. Once, while delivering a pizza in the middle of a downpour, I slipped and dropped the box. My boss withheld part of my salary, and the customer yelled at me. I stood there, soaked in the rain, staring at the ruined pizza on the sidewalk. I wondered if all this effort was truly worth it. But then I remembered the fire that had been burning inside me since the day I left that house. I got up, went back to my tiny rented room, and kept trying. The opportunity came on a fateful afternoon when I read an article about the booming green tech industry in Lyon. Startups focused on renewable energy and environmental apps were attracting major investments. I thought back to the energy optimization project Carlos and I had done in college, and that's when an idea began to take root. I decided to take the leap, even knowing the path would be full of obstacles. With the little savings I had in Carlos's support, we began building a small startup, working day and night on software that would help smart buildings save energy. Carlos and I worked from my cramped rented room, where our desk was a plank resting on an old wine crate. My old university laptop barely functioned, crashing every time we ran complex algorithms. Carlos brought in a dusty desktop computer, but it wasn't much better. We shared packets of instant noodles and cheap coffee, exhausting ourselves with work. Some nights, I fell asleep at the keyboard, only waking when the morning light slipped through the cracked window. Our idea was to develop software using artificial intelligence to optimize energy usage in smart buildings. But turning that idea into reality required funding. Carlos and I decided to enter a startup competition in Lyon, where founders pitched their projects to investors. First prize was €50,000, enough to buy better equipment and rent a small office. We spent 2 months preparing, working 18-hour days to refine our prototype and presentation. I coded until my fingers went numb, while Carlos handled the interface design and market research. The night before the competition, I looked in the mirror and saw a skinny guy with deep dark circles, but still burning with determination. "You've got this, Gregory," I told myself. "You have to." On the day of the competition, I stood in a crowded auditorium, facing dozens of investors and rival teams. My hands trembled as I held the microphone, but I took a deep breath and began. I explained our idea, how it could help commercial buildings save millions and reduce tons of emissions each year. I shared my journey, a foster child who had faced hardship but never gave up. I didn't know if my personal story moved anyone. But when I finished, the auditorium erupted in applause. Carlos and I looked at each other, hearts pounding. We had won second place, with a €25,000 prize. It wasn't a fortune, but it was enough to feel like we were finally on the right path. With that money, we rented a small desk in a co-working space in downtown Lyon. Our office was just a wooden table, a few worn-out chairs, and a whiteboard covered in scribbled notes. But to me, it was everything. For the first time, I felt like I belonged somewhere, with a purpose worth pursuing. We founded our company and named it Excluded Solution. The name was Carlos's idea, inspired by the harmony between technology and nature. I was never great with names, so I just laughed and went along with it. In 2018, a big opportunity arose. We were invited to a green tech conference in Paris, an important event gathering startups and major investors. Carlos and I could barely afford the train tickets, but we tightened our belts and spent the money, knowing it might be our last chance. At the conference, we presented our project to a group of investors from a venture capital firm called EcoVenture. They were impressed by how our software used AI to predict and adjust energy consumption in real time. After the presentation, a silver-haired woman named Sophie Muller, the fund's director, invited us to dinner to talk further. That dinner was the first time I felt truly heard. Sophie wasn't just interested in the product. She asked me about my story. I told her everything, not to win sympathy, but because I wanted her to understand I wasn't just there for the money. I wanted to build something meaningful, something that could actually improve the world. Sophie nodded, empathy in her eyes. At the end of the dinner, she said, "Gregory, I believe in you. Not just because of your product, but because I can see that you never give up." A week later, EcoVenture agreed to invest €1 million in Excluded Solution, in exchange for 20% of the company. That money changed everything. We moved into a real office. We hired 3 engineers and a marketing specialist. And I began learning how to lead a company, from managing finances to building a team. In 2020, Excluded Solution launched its first product. We closed a deal with a hotel chain in Lyon, reducing their energy costs by 30% in just 3 months. Word spread quickly, and new contracts followed. Commercial buildings, shopping centers, even a university in Nice wanted our software. Revenue soared. 2 years after that first investment, the company was valued at €10 million. The same guy who used to deliver pizzas in the rain, was now CEO of a respected startup in the green tech sector. Challenge, a well-known French business magazine, even featured me in an article about outstanding entrepreneurs under 30. When I read it, I smiled wryly. They had no idea what I had gone through to get there. Success brought a life I had never dared to dream of. I left that moldy, rented room for a small, sunny apartment in downtown Lyon. I bought a reliable used car, no more pedaling in the heat. I sent money to Carlos so he could buy a house for his mother in Spain, as a thank you for standing by me through the hardest times. But even with money, I never forgot where I came from. I still ate instant noodles when I was too busy. Wore old t-shirts to work. And I kept that photo of my foster family in a drawer, not because I missed them, but to remind myself how far I had come. Though my life had transformed, a quiet emptiness lingered inside me. Since leaving Provence 11 years ago, I hadn't contacted my adoptive parents, Robert and Helena Lambert. In moments of silence, I sometimes wondered how they were. Despite the pain they had caused me, I still felt a sense of gratitude. Maybe they never loved me like a biological child, but they did take me in and give me a roof when I was just a ward of the state. I had told myself that one day I would thank them. Not for the affection they withheld, but to prove that I had lived well, but I hadn't let the past define me. The idea of a grand gesture of gratitude began to take shape. I wanted to do something meaningful, something that might make them see me differently. Then I thought of a villa by the sea, the perfect gift for my father's 65th birthday. A milestone worth celebrating. In 2023, I sold part of my shares in the company during a second round of investment, gaining a substantial sum. With that money, I quietly began looking for the perfect villa. And finally, I found it, a stunning house on the Côte d'Azur, just a few hours from Lyon. It sat right on the seafront, with huge windows facing the Mediterranean, a lush garden, and a spacious terrace where you could hear the waves crashing below. The villa cost €4 million, a significant amount, but I knew it was worth it. I pictured Dad sitting on the terrace, sipping his morning coffee as he gazed at the sea. I imagined Mom planting flowers in the garden, just like she used to in Provence. And maybe, just maybe, they'd invite me for dinner, looking at me not as a burden, but as a true son. This gift, I hoped, would bridge the years of silence. I worked with a notary to prepare the documents. The deed of donation, officially transferring the property to Robert Lambert, was signed and registered. I kept it all a secret. I told no one, not even Carlos. I wanted it to be a surprise, a moment that could change everything. I counted down the days until my father's birthday, January 4th. I knew I wouldn't be invited to the party, but I decided to show up anyway, holding the deed and a sincere wish in my heart. I wasn't expecting hugs or apologies. I just hoped he would see that I had become someone he could be proud of. In the days leading up to it, I couldn't stop thinking about the past. Some nights, I take out the old photo from the drawer and stare at that 5-year-old boy smiling between his parents. I wondered if they still remembered those days when they carried me in their arms and sang lullabies. I didn't know the answer, but I chose to believe that, deep down, they held some affection for me. This gift, I thought, would rekindle that spark. My father's 65th birthday finally arrived. I drove from Lyon to Provence with my heart pounding like a child waiting for Christmas morning. The deed was carefully placed in a white envelope on the passenger seat. I wore a simple suit. I felt like I needed to look my best, for the first time in years. Along the way, I rehearsed my greeting in my mind. Happy birthday, Dad. I brought you a special gift. I imagined his surprise, Mom's smile. And maybe, just maybe, they'd see me as a true son at last, not just the adopted and forgotten boy. The 3-hour drive from Lyon to Provence gave me too much time to think. I remembered my childhood in that house. Sunday mornings filled with the smell of Mom's buttery biscuits. Dad pushing me on the swing, laughing. Gregory, you're gonna fly like an eagle. But when Julian and Leah were born, everything fell apart. I became a shadow, forgotten in my own family. Mom's words when I was 8. You're just a placed boy still echoed in my mind, sharp as a blade. And yet, I remained grateful. They had taken in an orphan. And I wanted to thank them with this gift, hoping it could erase the years of distance. I arrived at the old house in Provence late in the afternoon. The white fence was still there. Mom's daisy garden was immaculately cared for. Music and laughter drifted from the backyard. The party was in full swing. I took a deep breath. Clutching the envelope, I stepped through the gate. My heart was pounding, laced with fear. I hadn't been invited. No one knew I was coming. But I told myself, "You've made it this far, Gregory. Don't stop now." The backyard was packed. Over 50 guests, friends, relatives, and my parents' colleagues were gathered around tables draped in white cloth. A small band played upbeat music, and the air was filled with the aroma of grilled meat. I lingered on the edge, trying to blend in with the crowd. But the moment I took a step forward, I felt the eyes on me. Julian and Leah, now 27, spotted me almost instantly near the buffet table. Julian, a tall, blonde, wearing an expensive shirt, grinned with scorn the moment he saw me. Leah, her long hair pinned back and dressed in a striking red dress, brought a hand to her mouth, her eyes gleaming with mockery. "Well, look who showed up." Julian shouted loud enough to catch everyone's attention, each word dripping with sarcasm. "Gregory! Long time no see. Still remember the way home?" "Oh darling," Leah chimed in with her sharp voice, "he's wearing a suit. Don't tell me you're here to ask for a job at Daddy's bank." They burst into laughter, as if I were a walking punchline. My face burned, but I forced myself to hold my ground, gripping the envelope tighter. "I'm here to wish Dad a happy birthday," I said, my voice steady. "And I brought a special gift for him." Julian raised an eyebrow, stepping closer, swirling the drink in his hand. "A special gift? Seriously? Let me guess, a cheap tie?" "A drawing you made yourself," he sneered, eyeing me from head to toe. Still behind him, Leah added, "Wait, Gregory, Dad has a special gift for you today too. I bet you'll cry when you find out what it is." They exchanged knowing looks, laughing like they were in on some cruel secret I wasn't privy to. "What gift?" I asked, my voice tense, a sinking feeling gnawing at me. Julian shrugged with a smug grin. "Just wait. Dad's going to announce it soon. Trust me, you'll want to see this before you do anything stupid." Their words made me hesitate. A gift from Dad, after 11 years of silence? Was he trying to make amends? I didn't dare to hope, but a part of me, the boy who once dreamed of being loved by them, wanted to believe. "I'll wait," I murmured, my voice low but resolute. Julian and Leah laughed louder, as if I'd just told the best joke of the night. "Smart choice, Gregory." "Don't go anywhere," Leah said before pulling Julian back into the crowd of guests, leaving me alone among strangers. I looked around, searching for my parents. I spotted them near the main table. Dad wore a gray suit, and Mom was in an elegant floral dress. As I approached, their eyes lifted, and I saw the shock on their faces. Dad froze, his wine glass suspended in midair. "Gregory," he whispered, as if seeing a ghost from the past. Mom raised a hand to her mouth, her eyes wide with panic. What are you doing here?" she asked, her voice trembling, as if my presence was an intrusion. I smiled, even though my chest tightened. "I'm here to wish Dad a happy birthday," I said, holding out the envelope. "And I brought a special gift." Dad looked at the envelope, then back at me, his eyes filled with surprise and discomfort. Mom averted her gaze, refusing to meet my eyes, her hands clenched tightly in front of her. "Thank you, Gregory. Later." "All right?" Dad said with a cold, distant tone. Then he turned back to the man beside him and resumed the conversation. I stood there, feeling like a stranger. But I didn't leave. I wanted to give him the gift, to show him who I had become. And I still wanted to know what this special gift Julian and Leah had mentioned was. The party went on, but I was completely ignored. No one offered me a seat. No one asked how I'd been. I stayed near the fence, watching people eat and they laughed as if I were a ghost, silent and invisible. Julian and Leah cast the occasional glance my way, whispering and giggling. I tried to ignore them, but every sarcastic smile felt like a small knife to the chest. I kept telling myself to be patient, that the moment I handed over the gift would change everything. I imagined my father opening the envelope, reading the deed of donation, and realizing how hard I had worked to honor him. But deep down, a quiet voice whispered, Gregory, you're expecting too much. Then, the crucial moment came. Dad stepped onto a small platform in the backyard, tapping his glass to get everyone's attention. The chatter died down, and all eyes turned to him. "Thank you all for being here today," he began, his warm voice echoing through the air. "Today is not just my 65th birthday. It's also an opportunity to share an important decision." He pulled a document from his pocket and held it up for everyone to see. "This is my will. I want everyone to know that my assets, this house, my bank accounts, everything will be equally divided between Julian and Leah, my beloved children." But he didn't stop there. His next words were sharp and aimed directly at me. "By the way, Gregory, my adopted son, is here today after more than a decade of absence. He says he has a birthday gift for me, but I believe he's just trying to win back my sympathy." A shame. It's too late. The will is already finalized. Then, looking straight at me, he added, "Sorry, Gregory. Since you're only adopted, I forgot to include your name in the will." The backyard erupted with laughter and applause. Julian and Leah hugged each other, beaming with triumph. I stood frozen, as if the ground had vanished beneath my feet. Was this the special gift they were talking about? A will that erased me from the family, announced publicly in front of dozens of people? I looked at Julian, who turned to me with a malicious grin. "Told you, Gregory. Dad had a gift for you." Leah chimed in with her shrill voice. "I said he'd cry. Just look at his face." They laughed loudly, as if my pain was the funniest joke of the night. Some guests gave me brief glances, curious, maybe even a little sympathetic. But no one said a word. I turned my eyes back to Dad, hoping he'd say it was a joke, a twisted prank to liven up the party. But no. He stepped down from the platform and resumed the celebration as if I didn't exist. Mom remained there, silent, arms crossed tightly, her gaze distant. Her face was expressionless. My heart shattered. All the years of hard work, sleepless nights, and the hope of having a family vanished in that instant. Once again, I was that 8-year-old boy standing in the kitchen, hearing my mother say coldly, "You're just an adopted child." Those same words, after 25 years, had now been repeated, this time by my adoptive father. Tears welled up, but I refused to cry. I wouldn't let Julian and Leah see me fall apart. I wouldn't give my parents the satisfaction of believing they'd broken me. Clutching the envelope with trembling fingers, I stepped forward and positioned myself in the center of the garden, facing my father. The crowd fell silent. Every eye was on me. "I came here to say thank you, not to beg," I said, my voice shaky but clear, echoing in the stillness. I held the document up for all to see. "This is the deed to a villa on the Côte d'Azur, valued at $4 million. I bought it with the intention of gifting it to you, as a way of thanking you for raising me." A murmur spread through the crowd. My father froze. His eyes widened, and his hand trembled slightly. My mother covered her mouth, her face going pale as if she had just realized something dreadful. Julian and Leah stood frozen, their smiles gone. I continued, my voice steadier now. "I've worked my whole life, not to prove anything to anyone, but to prove something to myself. I thought this gift might bridge the gap between us, that maybe you'd see me as a son. But now I understand, that's not necessary." I looked into my father's eyes. Then, slowly, I began to tear the property deed into pieces. The fragments fell to the ground like shards of my broken heart. The crowd held its breath. Julian and Leah were speechless, their mouths hanging open. My father took a step forward, his lips moving, but no sound came. I turned my back and walked out of the garden without looking back. The music resumed, but the mood of the party had shifted. I heard whispers behind me. "That's Gregory, the adopted son. How could they treat him like that?" But I no longer cared. I passed through the gate, got into my car, and drove back to Lyon, leaving that house, and the last traces of hope for a family, behind me. During the drive, I didn't cry. Instead, I felt a strange sense of relief. As if I had finally let go of a weight I had carried for decades. In the days that followed the party, I tried to return to my routine. Excluded Solution, my green tech company, was thriving. We had just signed a major contract with a chain of malls in Nice, and my team, now over 60 people strong, was working tirelessly to improve our energy optimization software. I attended meetings, joked with my staff, and gave interviews to the press with the poise of a successful CEO. But each night, back in my apartment, silence awaited me. The old family photo was no longer there. I had thrown it away after the party. But the memories still haunted me. I kept asking myself if I had done the right thing, tearing up the deed and walking away. Was there another way to end that chapter without adding another scar? That's when I realized I needed to heal. Not to forgive my adoptive parents, Robert and Helena, or Julian and Leah, but to forgive myself. To forgive the young Gregory who once believed that a family's love had to be earned. Who believed he had to try harder to be loved. I sought out a therapist, a wise older woman named Clara. At our first session, I sat in an armchair with my hands tightly clasped, unsure of where to begin. Just say whatever comes to mind, Clara said with a warm smile. And so I did. I spoke about my childhood marked by abandonment, the difficult years, and the birthday party that shattered my hopes. I let emotions I had buried for years flow like a river breaking through a dam. Some sessions ended in tears. Others, in anger, I would punch the armrest cushion in frustration. But with each visit, I felt a little lighter. Clara helped me see that childhood wounds don't disappear just because you achieve success or wealth. You've built a life you can be proud of, Gregory, she said during one session. But you have to allow yourself to feel the pain instead of burying it. I started keeping a journal, something I'd never done before. Each night, I sat at my desk and wrote down thoughts, memories, and dreams of a life freed from the past. I wrote about my father pushing me on the swing. About my mother coldly saying I was just an adopted child. About the moment I tore up the property deed in front of everyone. Writing helped me see it all more clearly, not to assign blame, but to understand. I couldn't change them. But I could change how I treated myself. A year passed since that birthday party. I hadn't reached out to my adoptive parents, nor heard from Julian or Leah. They had become part of my past, a chapter one had closed. But life has a curious way of surprising us. On a cold March day, I was invited to speak at a conference on sustainable energy in Bordeaux as the keynote speaker. Excluded Solution was now a leader in green technology, and my speech was meant to inspire young entrepreneurs and startups. Standing on stage before more than 500 people, I shared my journey from a ward of the state to the CEO of a multi-million-euro company. I didn't mention my adoptive parents, but I did speak about the wounds that shaped me, and how I turned them into strength. When I finished, the audience rose and gave me a standing ovation. I smiled, feeling that I had come so very far. After the speech, I mingled with the crowd. In the reception area, as I shook hands with investors and chatted with students, an elderly woman with gray hair tied in a bun and wearing a long coat approached me. Her eyes were gentle but filled with emotion. "Gregory," she said warmly. I searched my memory, trying to place her. Then it hit me. It was Aunt Marguerite, my mother's older sister, whom I had only met a few times as a child. "Aunt Marguerite?" I asked, surprised. She nodded, smiling, though her eyes were red. "I heard your speech," she said. "I'm so proud of you, Gregory. But I need to tell you something about Robert's birthday party, after you left." We sat in a quiet corner of the conference venue. Marguerite held my hand, as if to steady me. She told me that after I tore up the property deed and walked out of the party, the mood in the garden grew heavy. Everyone was stunned. "Gregory," she said, "no one expected you to have come so far. A €4 million villa as a gift for Robert and Helena. But what shocked everyone even more was how you left, without begging, without tears, your head held high." She said some guests started whispering, criticizing my adoptive parents for their unfair treatment of me. One of my father's longtime friends, George, told him bluntly, "Robert, you just lost an incredible son." Julian and Leah, Marguerite continued, at first laughed it off, claiming I was just putting on a show. But when some relatives left early, not wanting to witness such hypocrisy, my siblings went quiet. Leah looked guilty, Marguerite said. She sat alone in a corner, silent. Julian tried to act confident, but drank too much as if trying to drown something. My father, Robert, didn't speak for the rest of the evening. He sat at the head table, staring blankly at the shredded pieces of the deed on the ground. Marguerite said that as she left, she saw him pick up each piece and put them in his pocket. Hearing this story stirred something deep within me. I didn't know what to feel: pain, anger, or just emptiness. Do you think he regrets it? I asked, my voice trembling. Marguerite sighed and gently squeezed my hand. I believe he does, Gregory. But they're both too proud to admit it. Helena never mentions you to me, but I know she reads every article written about you. Robert has aged a lot since that night. I think he knows he was wrong, he just doesn't know how to fix it. I sat in silence, gazing out the tall windows of the conference hall. Sunlight filtered in softly. I wasn't angry at my adoptive parents. Not exactly. I was just sad. Sad that we could have had a different story if only they had loved me like a real son. But I was also deeply grateful to Marguerite. Thank you, Aunt Marguerite, I said with a smile. I'm really okay. She hugged me, and for the first time in years, I felt a flicker of warmth from someone in my adoptive family. After that encounter, I returned to Lyon and continued my journey. I didn't try to reach out to my adoptive parents, or to Julian or Leah. I didn't need their regret, or their apologies. I had found freedom not by running from my past, but by facing it and letting it go. In the months that followed, alongside therapy, I discovered a new purpose: helping others. I began working with charities, focusing on supporting children in foster care and families in need. I founded a non-profit organization called Chemin d'Avenir, Path Forward, inspired by my own journey, a path toward light despite a beginning in darkness. The foundation offers scholarships to orphans, funds skill development courses, and builds community centers in underprivileged areas. On my first visit to a center in Eastern Lyon, I met a 12-year-old boy named Miguel, slender, with shy but bright eyes that lit up when he spoke about his dream of becoming an engineer. I sat with him and listened to his story, a single mother who worked as a cleaner, and how he had learned to code using an old library computer. I saw myself in Miguel, a child dreaming of rising above his circumstances. I awarded him a scholarship and promised to follow his progress. When Miguel hugged me, whispering, "Thank you, sir," I felt a joy that no amount of money could ever buy. Charity work didn't just help others, it healed me. Each time I met a child in foster care, each time I saw hope in their eyes, I was reminded that I wasn't alone. I had found my family. Not in Provence, but among the people I helped. In my team at Syncrovert. Among friends like Carlos, who stood by me through my darkest days. I began to slow down, to appreciate the little things: a morning run by the river, a hot coffee in the office, a video call with Carlos and his mother in Spain. I learned to love myself not because of success or recognition, but by accepting that I had done my best. And for me, that was enough. I no longer needed attention or validation from my adoptive parents. This is the story of my life. A journey from abandonment and foster care, through years of hurt in my adoptive home, to the fight for survival, and finally, to the freedom I found within myself. I hope my story resonates with you, perhaps as a spark of motivation to rise with confidence in your own life. And I wish you the courage to face your past, the strength to move through pain, and the faith to believe that light always waits at the end of the road if only you keep walking.
Reddit Relics comment: this story is a powerful reminder that success alone doesn't heal old wounds. Gregory's journey shows us that no matter how far we go or what we achieve, the pain of the past can still linger, and that's okay. Healing isn't about forgetting or pretending everything is perfect. It's about facing the pain, forgiving yourself, and finding inner peace. What touched me most was that despite all the rejection and betrayal, Gregory chose to build his own family, through kindness, charity, and the people who stood by his side. That is true strength. If you're watching and carry emotional scars, know that your story isn't over. You can find your own light, even after the darkness. Keep moving forward, keep believing, and don't be afraid to ask for help when you need it. Thank you for following this story. I hope it inspires you as much as it inspired me. If you liked the video, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and leave a like. Share this story with friends or family. You never know who might need to hear something like this. And of course, drop your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. I love reading each and every one of them. See you in the next one.